So let's dive right into it. Today's agenda for this is obviously this is an access control webinar. It's our first one we're doing on this topic, and I don't think it will be the last. So we'll dive more into some of this in future ones. But we're going to do a quick introduction on access control. So if you're not familiar even with what access control is, we'll just give you a brief one on that. Um, the different types of access control from on-premise systems to cloud, what kind of the difference is with that. We'll talk about our solution that we offer, which is called Avigilon Alta. We'll dive a little bit more into that with its video reader features, talking about some of the cloud advantages and so on. So if you're not familiar with who we are, that we are STW. We are a value-driven company that offers end-to-end security solutions. So whether it's cameras or you can see now access control as well. We do turnkey installation. Access control is an install-only product, so if you're looking for it, we have to install it. But we do a great job with installation on access control as well. So. All right, let's jump right into the topic now. So, access control, what even is this? If you're not familiar with the term, the easiest way I always describe it to people who is if you ever had a place where you have a badge and you tap a badge to a little thing outside the door, that's access control, right? And so access control works with electronic locks to determine who can access it, which doors and entries, and at what times. And so along with that, you get logging capability. It gives you complete insight on, who's accessing the building when. Obviously, it also simplifies it for the actual employees, and ensures safety and security at your facility. And when it comes to access control, the way to roll out access control is that there's really two different buckets of access control. There's something called on-premise access control or cloud-based access control. Now, from like a employee kind of standpoint, they're not going to notice the difference. It's going to be the same thing. They tap their credential, whether that's a phone, which we'll talk about, your badge, key fob, or whatever to the reader. They're going to look identical. This is going to mostly matter to the people who are installing and managing the system. So from the day-to-day operations. So on-premise or on-prem. What is an on-prem thing? Well, basically what that means is within an access control system to create all those rules on who can access what doors and what times they can access them. And all that kind of information, it has to be stored in some kind of database inside some software, right? You have to go in and be able to make those adjustments. And so what an on-premise access control system means is that the actual software is something that you have and you host at your location. So typically that means that you have a server like something we see here in this image, could be smaller, it just depends on who you're dealing with. And it often runs either like a Windows server version or some kind of Linux server, sometimes an embedded one. And when you go and you want to add a new employee or you want to add a new person or revoke a person, you go into that actual physical piece of hardware essentially to make that change. Um, and so what that means as well is that you are responsible for the upkeep, the maintenance, the security, and how you're able to access that device in most cases. Um, so to kind of give you a little bit of a pro and con on that, and we'll dive a little bit more into some of that in just a second, is the first pro is that when it comes to on-premise, this is the only type that will offer you what's considered an air-gapped solution. So in some cases, especially the most secure facilities, they don't want internet access to anything essentially, right? And so obviously a cloud-based system, you do need to have internet access at some degree to operate. And so this on-premise does allow you to do it without internet access at all. Um, the second consideration, and this is one that I think is a little bit misunderstood, so that's why I have an asterisk here. It says may have less reoccurring fees, and again, asterisk. And what that means is that when you think of cloud, you almost always think monthly fees or reoccurring fees or yearly fees, whatever. And you think on-premise, especially for those who are more coming from our camera line. Our on-premise stuff does not have any recurring fees or anything like that. With access control, it's a little different. There are some ones out there that do offer no monthly or reoccurring fees, but a lot of the larger ones, even if they are on premise, still have fees, right? Whether that's a software fees, update fees, etc. So on premise, there's more likelihood that you're going to find a no fee solution, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to find a no fee solution or that it doesn't have fees. Now the considerations or the downsides is typically you have to purchase that server. So that's an initial upfront cost that you've got to front to be able to get that access control system in there. And as I mentioned, things to manage, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but all that data is on that server. So you got to make sure that you're being up to date on backups and making sure that if that thing ever hard drive or storage in there ever dies, that you're not left with nothing, right? The other side of this too is that in a lot of cases you have to determine the access level. There are still some systems out there, believe it or not, on an access control standpoint that within their documentation tells you to port forward to get access to it. So obviously, when you're doing it on premise, it's kind of your responsibility to figure out how you have access, whether that's just on location, whether that's through a VPN, which kind of gets to our next point. This is something that IT then has to do very consistently, right? They've got to make sure they're managing those backups, that things are working right, that the fans on them are not being caked in dust and all that fun stuff. So now what does cloud access mean? So what cloud access means is that server part does not exist. What it means is that when all of the access control settings, the database essentially is all stored within a cloud access. And so the key benefits here with cloud-based access control is that there is no on-premise server to purchase or maintain. It's a significantly lower burden on IT, really very little to none in most of our rollouts. And it's simpler, more secure access anywhere because it's using end-to-end encryption. You don't have to worry about, figuring out who has access, setting up VPNs and all that fun stuff. And then the other side of cloud access that is important to consider too is better integrations with other services. And we'll talk about that in just a moment too. So wrapping that up a little bit, cloud access control, no on-site server, easier to deploy and access, easier on IT. Um, and the consideration with it is you need internet access, right? There's no way to air gap a cloud access control system. And then on the other side, reoccurring fees. I don't, there's no cloud access that does not have reoccurring fees that I'm aware of. Now, as I mentioned before, on-prem doesn't mean that there's no reoccurring fees. It just means there's more options out there without reoccurring fees. Here's our stance on access control and everything we've done with it. When it comes to access control, cloud is king. And I think the three major reasons why we really prefer cloud-based access control is three things. Number one, it's simpler to set up and maintain. It's far easier and far more secure access to the system. And then the third part is the better integrations. So let's talk about these things. First off, the setup and maintenance. Again, on premise, I don't want to keep kind of hammering this down and beating a dead horse a little bit, but um, there are ones out there again that you need a big managed server to kind of to deal with their software, right? And IT is the one that ends up being responsible for maintaining this. There are some of them will try to get around this by offering like very expensive, heavy service plans to a lot, for them to be responsible for making sure backups are good and everything like that. So You end up paying for that versus, something on the cloud that doesn't need that, for example. Um, Another thing too, I mentioned that upfront cost of having to buy that server. Um, if you're not in the IT, you may actually not know this, but um, well, I guess just about everything is going up in price, of course, but especially computer equipment, electronics. The AI kind of explosion is causing this, and so the servers for access controls are just computers, right? So this is affecting the cost of on-premise access control as well. It changes the cost to acquire a server and changes the cost to in time to repair components. So if you have an issue with the power supply on that server and you need to replace it, the time to actually repair that have gone up potentially as well. So now let's compare that again to cloud access control. There is no on-premise server to buy or maintain. Um, if we're believing what a lot of experts are saying, the cost for PC hardware is only going to go up over the next um, couple years here. We're only in the mid cycle of all this, I suppose. And so being cloud-based and removing that component makes it a much better initial cost is usually much lower. Again, all of that stuff, the settings, the database, the logs, with our solution specifically, are all stored securely in the cloud. So there's no need to worry about all backing that stuff up and keeping it all manually done. And then another huge part of this, which we haven't actually hit on too much, is the fact that cloud access gives you basically unlimited scalability. And this is either for our multi-location clients that want to be able to manage all their locations within one portal, but also for growth too. You might go from half your building having access control to then, expanding that building and needing more access control. And you don't want to have to deal with multiple servers and all that fun stuff. So the scalability for cloud access is also very, very unbeatable. Now let's talk about cybersecurity and access again. Um, the key thing with cloud-based access control, especially good cloud-based access control, I'll put as the caveat there, is the security is largely done for you. And again, with our option, which is Avigilon Alta, this is fully end-to-end encrypted using AES 256 encryption, multi-factor authentication options, SSO options, um, and it's all remotely accessible anywhere to people who need to have access. So when you need to make a change, whether you're there at the facility or you're, a centralized team, you can do it securely knowing that you've got all these options behind you. Now, again, with on-premise, it basically becomes part of your job, right? You're responsible for making sure that that server gets updates to maintain the cybersecurity of it, to figure out how access is going to be given, because in a lot of them you can only access it through the IP address, right? And so um, that means figuring out who has access, maybe setting it up on a VLAN, sometimes setting it up on for a VPN so people can have remote access to it. But it's a lot more effort. It's a lot more on you to maintain that security than it is for your your cloud-based systems. And then the other big part about this too, when it comes to cloud, is um, on a lot of on-premise software, right? Access control has been around for a very, very long time. And a lot of on-premise was the first type of access control to be out there. And a lot of them were designed decades ago and they look like it, right? Some of them still look like a Windows XP program out there. Sometimes when we're doing consultations with people and we're looking at what they have, it's kind of it's like nostalgic looking at it. I'm like, oh, I remember that looked like Windows XP. I remember that getting that computer when I was a kid. So whereas most cloud-based systems offer modern, easy-to-use interfaces to make sure your access is, as easy as possible for whoever's managing it. Because with access control, The people who are managing the system day to day are typically HR, sometimes security teams, and it's got to be easy for everybody, not just tech wizards, to be able to get in and be able to make changes and manage in the system. Because if it's not, then you start to lose that control on the system. You start to forget, oh, did we revoke access to that guy who left? And does somebody have, who has access to what doors? If you start to lose that, that access control system that costs a lot of money to put in is, you know, less and less useful than it should be. Now let's move on to integrations and kind of what that really means. Um, Integrations open up a ton of possibilities. So we'll talk about some of these and give you a couple of examples, but like um, one of the big ones we deal with pretty frequently is identity providers. So this is your Microsoft Azure, Active Directory kind of stuff, G Suite, Okta, all these ones that allow, again, HR when they're onboarding or offboarding an employee to sync that with the tools that they already use, so they're not duplicating work. And when you're onboarding somebody and you can just tap, hey, this is the access I want them to have, this is the access group, without having to even go into the access control software, it makes that the tightness of the system. So the knowledge that, hey, yes, this person has been get granted access. Hey, yes, this person has been revoked access. Significantly higher. The success rate is much, much higher that way. Um, there's also visitor management platforms. So for people who have a lot of guests that they want to get into, or kiosks that they want to set up for visitors to be able to access certain areas. Emergency response platforms to do automatic lockdowns when there's or open doors when there's other emergencies, etc. Even Slack alerts. There's some of our clients use Slack alerts to let them know when a certain door is opened and so on. I want to give you a recent example that we just actually worked with. This was a property management company, so it was a apartment complex. They manage multiple apartment complexes, and they use a software called Yardi Voyager to handle their residents. Right, this is where they go in and when they have a person to be added, so a new resident or people who are moving out. This is where they manage all of that. Check to see how they're doing on their billing, any complaints that they have, etc. It's their lifeblood of their facilities. And one of the best things that we discovered with that is that our Avigilon Alta solution syncs with Voyager so that anytime they add a new resident, it syncs automatically. Um, and then we can also set it up to where it automatically gives them access with mobile credentials. So, which we'll cover in a little bit here too. So it's all this just cut a lot of work that they had to do previously with their other access control system, and it again tightened that um, the security of the system as well. All right, kind of the next thing I want to do is jump right into the access solution that we offer. But before I do that, I'll just open the floor up to any kind of questions. If you guys have any questions on access control in general, maybe cloud-based versus on-prem, feel free to put them into the questions section on Zoom there. Um, and I'll try to address them now, but otherwise, I'll go ahead and start with this as well. So, Avigilon Alta, just a quick intro on who they are. If you ever heard of the company OpenPath, OpenPath Access Control, that was the previous name. They were purchased by Motorola and brought into the Avigilon family. And what it is cloud native access control. It's mobile native access control, video native access control, using top class security and ease of use with unlimited scalability. And we'll talk about what that all means here a little bit more specifically. So, cloud native. Vigilon Alta was always designed as a cloud only. There's no on-premise servers, no on-premise option at all, right? So again, what that means is that all of those access settings, the rules, the naming schemes, all that kind of stuff is right there in the cloud. In fact, as an advantage, for example, one of the big concerns, especially when we're talking about upgrading an access control system or doing a system takeover, is that cutoff time, right? When we're doing a brand new building, we have plenty of time to get this all configured and employees added in and all that fun stuff. When it comes to going from a building that currently has access control to um, replacing that access control system, our cutoff times are often, like a day, right? We have a day to kind of make that changeover complete. And so we can actually go in because it's a cloud-based system and pre-configure almost everything before even the system is online. So, it makes it significantly easier for us to do those system takeovers as being part of a cloud. Um, Again, end-to-end encryption, for cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is actually obviously important for every single thing that you use, but I would even say for access control in general, like it's even more, right? You don't want to have somebody to have access to your door scheduling and stuff like that, right? Um, and then unlimited scalability. You are never locked in. So whether you end up purchasing one for one location, then realizing that, hey, this works great, let's go ahead and do it for the next 6 warehouses that we offer. You're never locked in at all. So now, mobile native. I've used the term native twice now with this, and I think I have it another time. But like, what we're describing here is the system was really designed around these things. So it was designed around being a cloud-based access control system. It wasn't something that had to go from on-prem to access and making more of a transition like this. Same thing with mobile, right? The entire system was designed that mobile credentials are in a lot of ways better, and we'll cover really why that is in just a second. And to that point, all of the readers that Avigilon Alta offers support mobile credentials, so you don't have to go and purchase specific readers if you want to have mobile credentials. That's not true for most of the providers out there. Usually, mobile credentials are something that you have to kind of specifically choose, and then if you didn't choose it in the beginning, you're kind of out of luck, right? And so even the lowest cost entry level readers that they offer support full mobile credentials as well. And so mobile credentials are really cool. And actually, I'll give you an example. One of my favorite features of a Avigilon Alta, and you see it here in this image, is a feature called Wave to Unlock. So this is like mobile credentials is an optional thing. You don't have to use mobile credentials if you don't want to. But for example, in this case, this woman has her phone in her bag. You can just go right up to the reader, wave your hand in front of it. It reads the phone even if it's locked securely in your bag and allows you in, assuming that you have access to that door, right? So it's nice, convenient thing for your end users that they don't have to figure out where their badge is or all that kind of stuff. Um, but also, from a security standpoint, there's a lot of benefits to it. Um, First off, is there's no physical cards to lose or replace. You know, People lose their key cards, key fobs, badges all the time at large facilities, and there's a cost to that in terms of potential security breaches until that employee actually lets you know. There's a cost of actually replacing that, in terms of the actual physical key card, the badge printing, the ink, and all that fun stuff with it. So that part is kind of eliminated because people typically lose their phone a lot less than they lose that, right? And of course, when you replace a mobile credential, you're not physically replacing anything, so there's no cost with that. Um, and then the other big part of this too is that it actually helps eliminate badge sharing. So this is an issue where, somebody they don't want to they forgot their badge or whatever that day. They don't want to have to go and get a temporary badge from their team or whatever the situation is, and so they just borrow their buddy's badge and they tap in, tap out on that. Um, Obviously that's a big issue because then your logging is all gone. Sometimes badge sharing is also kind of one of those things for people who, they track just to see, hey, has this person been in the office this week or whatever. And so typically people are going to be a lot less likely to just hand off their smartphone to somebody than they are a badge. Um, the other thing too, is that when we are using mobile credentials, it is a fully encrypted connection from the phone to the reader. This could honestly be a webinar topic in itself, but one of the things that a lot of people are not aware of, and it's crazy, even today in 2026, access control systems are being installed with key cards and readers and stuff that are non-encrypted, which basically means that um, anybody can clone those credentials quite easily using a Flipper Zero or some other cheap tool to um, clone access if they wanted to, right? And it's actually becoming a more and more serious issue over time. And so with mobile credentials and also our encrypted key cards and key fobs, that's not possible. And then the final part about mobile credentials I'll talk about is just the secondary security options. We can set options to, if you have if you want to keep security a little bit more strict, we can do things like it requires you to unlock your phone, which, in your phone is needing to use either Face ID, passcode, etc., to be able to open that door. So it kind of gives you a secondary form of authentication, so you know that this person's phone is here, but also that they were able to unlock their phone. So, and the last part I kind of mentioned here was video native. And when it comes to video integration and access control, this is always a very big topic because mostly what people want is to be the ability to very easily see the video for an access event. When they see that James accessed the door at 12:31, they want to very easily be able to see that that was actually James accessing that door, especially when there are disputes about certain things. They don't want to have to go and excuse me. They don't want to have to go and then check into the video camera system to be able to sync that data up and go to 12. It just is an additional step that people don't want to do. Um, and so being able to integrate those two things is great and it's a big part of it. But native is better than integration all day. And what Avigilon Alta offers is native video readers. And the experience once we get these is amazing. There's a video reader and a video intercom, so we'll go ahead and discuss those right there. But the key thing is with these video readers is it just puts it everywhere, right? So with the video reader option, all the access events are automatically create a video event so that you can easily see it right there. And I'll show it to you in just a minute. Um, it's right there in the dashboard. There's a camera section where you can look that up. It's simple and as easy as it gets. So the video reader is a two-in-one device. It combines a reader and a camera. So it's one device that gives you the simplicity of not having to install a separate camera in that area. Um, it simplifies the install cost as well. And then the other big thing too with this, and we'll see this when we look at some of the videos, is um, a far better angle for access events. When we work with sometimes on an integration standpoint, we have a camera there. They already have a camera in the corner or something like that. When somebody's walking up to that door, we get this, the top of their heads. And we're not really seeing their face. And so if somebody's wearing a hat or really anything like that, we don't necessarily 100% know that that's sort of the right person at the credentials, right? And for security reasons, we want to see somebody's face. And so the reader is angled perfectly there to get their face, which we'll show. The second part is the video intercom. So this is a three-in-one device. It has the reader, the camera, and then the intercom functions all in one. So this is an awesome option for entrances, gates, any places where you might have visitors. Um, you can route it. This is one of those things that we could easily do a full webinar on, but you can route the calls to a smartphone and do like a video call like you see over here. You have a conversation with somebody, you choose to either unlock the gate or door. Um, you can also go to like a specific tablet. We do that in a lot of cases as well. Or even regular phone calls. We have some people who don't, want to do any of that. They don't even want to see the video. They just want to have a conversation, and it can route it to any phone, and you hit, I think it's number 7 to open the door, and it does it. It's pretty cool. So all that to be said, let's go ahead and actually jump into just a quick overview of the portal here, and kind of see what it actually looks like. So diving over here now, we are looking at the Avigilon Alta Access Control portal. So this is the portal that your admins are going to use. So they're going to see this, manage it. The people who day-to-day manage it, obviously the typical employee who just badges in, badges out, is not going to necessarily see this. So um, the first screen that you get when you log in, by the way, using just a web browser, a cloud-based access control system, before this webinar, I logged in using my multi-factor authentication credentials and all that fun stuff, is the dashboard. So this dashboard basically lets you know what's happening today. So you can see that I've actually have a little bit of a custom dashboard here, so I can see all my entries here. I can actually send an unlock signal to any of them. So if I want to unlock any of these doors, like for example, this tech one, I can send an unlock request over there. I can also even unlock it for a certain period of time. So if I know I have like I'll give you an example that we actually use our water delivery. When they come, we unlock it for 15 minutes so they can go in and out with the water bottles. Now down here as well, we see the activity dashboard. I'm currently filtering it, but you can see the different access events, whether it's granted and so on. And I'm going to filter to our front door over here. So you can see filtering is very quick and responsive. And this is the one where we have actually our video intercom. And so we can see over here some of these access events and how they're accessing. So you can see over here, Andrew's using one of our cards. Davis here is using a mobile access on his Android phone. And over here, right next to their name, we have a thumbnail, right? So if I need to check over here, this is 10:38. Hey, did Davis get in the door okay? Was it actually Davis? Whatever I need to figure out about this entry, um, I can click over here. It plays the video automatically. Sure enough, this is David. Here he is using that wave to unlock function that we talked about, and he gets into the door. And if I need that video or any of these videos, you can see right up here, just a quick download. Real simple. So that video integration is right there, easy and as right on the first screen you're actually seeing. Now, along with that, there's also a camera section here too. So you can see that if I want to go back in time, all of these by default are actually stored on the cloud for 30 days. So all the events, that is, you can purchase longer if you want to do, 60, 90 days or whatever you want, but 30 days is the default. So if I want to go back here to Wednesday the 22nd, and I can change it to events, let's go ahead and just do unlocks over here. I can go ahead and see, and I can also do different users. So let's go ahead and do Matthew over here and see the time that he accessed. Here he is at 8:43. And I can play the video. And again, this is from last week on Wednesday. Again, another person who's using the wave to unlock. And so yeah, that's pretty easy access to the video. Um, just some other settings over here as well that we kind of like about it. We got this EMAP function, which is really great, especially for our multi-location clients to kind of let you know what's going on with these. You can actually click here. In this case, with this video one, we can actually see that the video will load up here live as well. I can unlock it from here too if I want to. Now, when it comes to the day-to-day access for users, right? I'll use Andrew here. He's in our support team. I'll use him as an example. But you see over here, it's really simple. To add users, to change credentials. Over here is where we would issue credentials. You can see over here that we've got mobile credentials for him. So if I want to set up a new mobile credential for him, for example, if he's just got a new phone or something, All I have to do is click the send over here. They get an email. It takes about 5 minutes to set it up, to download the app and set it up. Some usually less, honestly. And then that's that. For the other ones, you can see over here where you can put it in. Like for example, our encrypted cards over here. You would just type in what's available there, or tap it and copy and paste whatever you need to do. For access, we separate this out by access groups. So you can see that, him being in our support team gives him a preset access rules. So for example, he's allowed into the basement door, not allowed into the installation area, allowed into the main office and the tech room. So that's just part of what we create with our support team. We can set up different times for that too. So if we want to say, support teams should only be able to access between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. We can do that. But we can also do it on a per user basis too. So maybe Andrew's a little special, and maybe he does need to access the installation shed once in a while. I can go ahead and grant him individual access and then to put an individual schedule on him from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. That simple. The last couple stuff I like to showcase with this too is the logging capability. So you can see over here that we've got a bunch of different ways of getting some of that information from entry summary entries. So if we just take a look and see what's happening with a specific entry, let's go back to about last week here, and we will choose the front door. This is going to let you know who's accessing that door, how frequently, and if there's been any denials, when the last time they've accessed it. So, for example, if I want to see when the last time Devin has accessed the door over here, I can see it was on the 28th here at 3:27. And then if I want to kind of know more about specific people, I can go to the user one, and let's go back to like the beginning of the month here, and I'll use Devin as an example. This will showcase basically his entry times, all that fun stuff. And then we also have the user one over here as well, which I'll do that. And go back to the 15th, I suppose. And this will basically give you the log of everything that, all the doors Devin has accessed here at the system. Real simple. We can also export all this information to CSV files. There's also options to have certain reports delivered to you by email automatically on a weekly or whatever basis as well. And then the last thing, in terms of the integrations, this is where we kind of get this process started. So you can kind of see what that looks like here. These are the identity providers, HR software we kind of mentioned. So you can see Intro, Active Directory, Azure, the Microsoft solution, G Suite, the Workspace, Okta, OneLogin, Workday, etc. And then some of the other things here. So like in certain industries can, are some of these are very specific to certain industries. So these are visitor management, which is kind of a universal thing. But then, if we kind of keep scrolling down here, we got video integrations, badge printing options for either on-site or off-site badge printing, tenant experiences. So, if you're an apartment complex, and again, use I apartments. There we go. We got some integration there. But even down to things like gym management. Like that was another example that we actually have been working on lately. Let's see, is it Planet Fitness, I believe? Yeah. So you can see over here, like Buzz Ops is a big one that gym memberships use. So this allows them to automatically grant access or revoke access when somebody's credit card expires or doesn't go through, etc. So, a lot of options for integration. So, this works with what you already have. It reduces duplicate work. It reduces um, that syncing. When you have to manually keep two things in line, it reduces the likelihood that they're going to get out of sync, essentially. So. Um, with all that to be said, I think that is the end of our webinar here. I think that's all I got, really. Let's see. Actually, I do have one more slide, which is basically, I know I just talked for, close to 45 minutes here on access control, and it's a lot to cover, right? That we're really scratching the surface. I'm sure we'll have more specific um, webinars to go over specific topics on access control, whether it's like maybe the video intercom and all that. Um, but access control is a very personal solution, right? When we're dealing with access control versus say a camera, we have to have a significantly what more is maybe not the right word, but we have to have a significant increase in like our knowledge of the facility, the rules, and we really have to make sure that we're working with the client to fully understand what they want to have happen, especially if it's a brand new facility. To make sure that we can implement it in the way that they need to in the best way so they can maintain it as well. Um, and so I think the best thing that you can do if you are interested in that access control, whether it's a brand new system or it's a replacement for a system, is reach out and get an expert one-to-one consultation and demo because we can talk more specifically about your use case, your concerns, how our solution can help improve those concerns. And then one final point I did want to mention about the people who are considering replacing and upgrading their access control. Here's the awesome thing for you guys. The vast majority of costs when it comes to access control is in that locking hardware installation process. So if you've already got locking hardware installed on your building, um, the cost to upgrade your system to something like a Avigilon Alta is significantly lower than like a net new client. So it is a great time um, to to consider upgrading and learning about what the options are there. So, and with that, that's kind of the end of the webinar. I'll open up for some Q&A. I know we just had a question come in here, but feel free to put in any questions. Dylan will be sending this recording out along with some more information. Um, yeah, thank you for attending and your time this afternoon. And the question that we have is when three people enter a door and the first person opens the door with mobile, does the system log other users also entering that door? Great question. So basically, I believe what you're describing is like three people are kind of huddled around the door, and they go to wave to unlock. Um, it's going to read one of them, and that's where if you have a very busy door and it's very important for there's options to change the range on that, right? With typically wave to unlock, you can be kind of far from it. Your phone can be in the pocket, whatever. We can also set it to where the phone actually has to tap that reader, so that all three of those people would have to tap it to let them in, right? Some of that too is also what we would consider like tailgating. So like somebody who maybe even if they have to tap it, right, that person could still go ahead and open that door and let their friends in. There's two parts to that, right? There are software solutions that allow us to kind of detect tailgating and make sure that, it's when one person tags in, that one person goes in, but that's also a training thing. Again, access control is a great solution, but you also need buy-in, I think, as well with it. If everyone kind of ignores that and just keeps the door open or props the door open and stuff like that, it obviously can only do so much. There are notifications for door propping too, by the way, with our system, but yeah, in that case, if we had a very busy one, I would suggest that we kind of minimize the range and make sure that let everyone know that they need to tap their phone physically to the reader as well. But really good question. That is actually one of the things I really like about Avigilon Alta. When we were searching for our access control solution, we love the idea of mobile credentials, but we were concerned about stuff like that as well. We were concerned that like, well, if the Bluetooth range is too high, what if somebody's outside the door and it lets them in? And you can really tweak that and really get it correct with it. So, great question. We'll keep it open here for any other additional questions that come in. But Dylan, anything else that you wanted to add or anything?
I think that's it. Once this records or we get it's processed, we'll upload it to YouTube, fire up the link. Feel free, you guys, to reply to that email if you have any other questions or want to talk to an expert. Um, But no, I think you covered everything. It's good. It's been a while since I've seen the back end of Avigilon, so it's cool to run through.
Yeah, super nice, super simple. Um, Another great question too, if a building's power is lost, does that open all the doors? So, excuse me, still dealing with a cold. So answer is no. First off, we have as a default, we have to install by code battery backups for this system. So that gives us, typically a couple hours of backup. Now, for longer outages, that now depends on the type of lock. Certain locks are what we call fail safe. And so what that means is that when power is lost, the doors do unlock. There's also doors that are fail secure, and that means that in the default position when the power is off, they will be locked, and you need to use like the key as an override or something like that. So I guess the main answer is no because we have a battery backup, but in a longer power outage, it depends on the type of locking hardware that's installed there. Um, and as a side note to that, I didn't mention in this, we think of cloud access control and all that. One of the common questions we do get is what happens if the internet goes out? Well, if the internet goes out, the system still works. You don't lose, your access controls or anything like that. Basically, what that means is if the internet's out at our office and I go and I add users or revoke a user, if the internet's out, those changes won't sync up until the internet's restored. So essentially, the system is kind of frozen in that time. And then once the internet's restored, those pushes happen. So system still works just as it did before the internet is out. And we'll keep around here for just any other question, but definitely some good ones there. Yeah, as Dylan said, keep an eye out for our emails about this, and definitely, if you're interested, do a one-to-one consultation. The other thing I'll mention, especially for those people who are, um, you know, considering this and you're trying to budget up for this and everything, is one thing that's nice about access control, especially if you don't have any access control right now, or even if you're doing that upgrade phase. Um, it can be done in phases too, right? Part of the nice thing about being that cloud access control is that it can grow with you as well. So maybe you want to start with your main doors and your gate, or just your gate, and then kind of go from there and go into the doors. All those options are on the table, and we will work with you best to kind of say like, okay, hey, let's really focus on the gate because that's appears to be the biggest pain points, right? And then maybe in a year we can start talking about some of the main entries and stuff and see how things go from there. So that's part of that more expert one-to-one consultation. And then we have a question that asks, did you say that this presentation will be emailed out for further sharing in our office? Absolutely. Yep. This will be emailed out, the full recording, along with some other links and information that we discussed here today. So,
Yeah, and feel free to reply to it as well. I think any random questions come up, we'll get that.
yeah, absolutely. And as we kind of wrap up today and the Q&A session here and close out of the webinar, I do want to mention that any questions you have, even if you don't want to do like a full consultation, just email us. We're happy to answer that way too if you kind of want to keep it a little bit more casual at the moment too. Whatever works for you. So, um, yeah, that said, I think this is a good time to go ahead and end it. Again, thank you everyone for your attendance and appreciate your time, and we will see you on the next one. Take
So,
care.
thanks, James. Nice work.